Welcome back. MVP Streebo here with you again from Mutantville.com, and it is time for another edition of the MMA Minute with MVP, and that's definitely a mouthful. This week we are going to talk about the upcoming UFC 114 main event, mainly because, I don't know, I thought the rest of the card was kind of weak, but that is going to entail a bout between Suga Rashad Evans and Quentin Rampage Jackson. So this is going to be a very, very interesting bout. This is probably one of the best grudge matches that we've had in MMA in quite a long time. Probably the best one since the Tito Ortiz-Ken Shamrock grudge match of the early 2000s and back in 2006, whenever it was that they finished their little trilogy up. Although these guys have been doing some primo smack talking, which went through the entire 10th season of The Ultimate Fighter, they haven't quite reached the heights of hilarity that Ken and Tito reached, but they're very evenly matched verbally, so I'm curious to see how they're going to match up in the ring. Now, probably until, well, I'll just be honest, until I started watching the 10th season of The Ultimate Fighter. This is the season that had Kimbo on there, obviously, and Quentin and Rashad were the opposing coaches on there. Probably until I watched that season, I was definitely leaning towards Rampage Jackson in this fight, because Rampage is more seasoned, he's bigger, stronger, he has good punch. I think he's probably definitely a better puncher, has better power than Rashad. But Rashad is a good wrestler, so you know there's a lot of things there to take into account. I've been a Rampage Jackson fan for a while. I think his first fight was in King of the Cage against a little Muay Thai fighter. I can't remember the guy's name now, but they eventually rematched in the UFC, and Rampage stopped him. But in his very first MMA fight, he was in there with a really tough seasoned guy, and Rampage wound up going the distance and just putting up a really good fight. I remember Ken Shamrock was doing the commentary for that, and he said, you know what, this guy, talking about Quentin, this guy, if he gets to the proper training, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. And you know, that bore out to be true. I'm not sure who Rampage got his training with for a while, but at one point he was in Tito Ortiz's camp. They were together for a while. It was Team Punishment, and that was a pretty impressive camp. You had Ortiz was fighting UFC, and Rampage at the time was over in Pride in Japan, and he first showed up in Japan fighting some of the little Japanese guys. He knocked one of them out, and so you had other ones step up, want to defend the fallen fighter's honor and want to fight Rampage, so Rampage would just keep fighting them and knocking them down. Rampage had an early fight in Pride with Sakuraba, and he was pretty much just outclassed in that. I think he did get submitted in that by armbar, but Sakuraba is one of the all-time great submission specialists in MMA. I mean, anybody that submitted Renzo Gracie is definitely a submission master, because Renzo knows it all. But so Rampage is a tough guy. He earned his stripes in Pride fighting against some of the cream of the crop. I mean, I was surprised when he beat Igor Vovchanchyn, who was a heavyweight. You know, he picked him up and slammed him on his head. I think he dislocated his shoulder or something along those lines, but he messed Vovchanchyn up. So this is an interesting matchup. Back in Pride, Rampage was always exciting because he was a strong puncher. You know, so he would beat guys down, but he was a good counter wrestler. But the thing is he was like the king of the slam. He would pick guys up and slam them all day long. And if you've ever watched any of the Pride highlight shows, you've seen that clip of Rampage where he picks up Ricardo Arona, who's a jiu-jitsu master and a wrestling specialist, where he picks him up over his head and then slams it down in like a powerbomb fashion and knocks him out cold. That was part of one of the Grand Prix tournaments, I think in 2005. But anyway, so a lot of reasons to go with Rampage there. Evans is he won the second season of Ultimate Fighter. He won it as a heavyweight, which is interesting. I always think it's interesting when a guy fights at heavyweight and he can manage to cut weight down to light heavyweight, because that means he's coming down and he's going to be very strong and able to hang with pretty much anybody in the light heavyweight division, because he's used to dealing with bigger, stronger fighters in the heavyweight division. So that's definitely a plus for Rashad. But I don't know. After watching season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter, I'm starting to think that Rashad is perhaps the more intelligent ring fighter. He's not a great boxer, but you know he can punch well enough to hurt you. Obviously, he knocked out Chuck Liddell. He's knocked out some other guys. But the thing about Rampage is after he got tooled by Lyoto Machida, he learned he needed to go back to the drawing board and rely on his strengths, and his strengths lie in his wrestling. And we saw that in his fight with Thiago Silva, where he just dominated Silva pretty much until he got caught late in the fight. But he dominated pretty much every aspect of that fight with his takedowns. And I'm leaning towards Rashad in this. I think he could probably do the exact same thing to Rampage. Rampage is going to want him to come out and trade punches with him. Rashad's just going to work his wrestling, take him to the ground, do a little bit of ground and pound, and win comfortable, but probably a comfortable unanimous decision. So it's a great grudge match. The two guys really hate each other, but I don't think we're going to see a big slugfest between the two. I think Rashad is definitely going to utilize his superior wrestling skills. But Rampage has shown that he is a good counter wrestler. He does like to slam guys. We haven't seen him do it much in the UFC, if at all. Has he slammed anybody in the UFC? I don't know. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but Rampage has some other cons going against him. He just took time off to go be in the A-team while Rashad has been active. You know, he's getting older. He's had a lot of wars. I mean, who knows how much those wars with Vanderlei Silva and Pride and his wars with Shogun took out of him. But you know, all that could catch up to him one day. It might have caught up to him in the fight with Forrest Griffin. So, you know, very, very interesting fight. The guys have been doing a lot of smack talk in the media. Obviously, the season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter was very, very entertaining because of them. And the build-up to this fight has been good. It's a bit of a letdown that Rampage backed out at the last minute after they built the whole season 10 around him and went off to do the A-team. But, you know, the guy's got to get paid. I mean, if I could get paid to be an actor instead of getting hit in the face, I would do it too. Not that I get paid to get hit in the face, but that should prove my point. Nobody wants to get paid to have to do that. So, you know, you can't blame the guy for that. But he's come back. They've made this grudge match, and Dana White has said it is for a shot at the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. So that's some good extra incentive for both fighters to go out there and win, and the winner gets a shot at Shogun and gets a chance to win the Light Heavyweight Championship, and that's something both men definitely want. And I'm not sure if either one of them really want to be in the ring with Shogun right now because the guy is really resurgent at this stage. But this should be an interesting fight. Very, very interesting fight. Hopefully it'll live up to expectations and be a good fight. But I'm expecting more of a technical battle. I think Rashad Evans has the better camp with the Greg Jackson camp. I think Rampage is probably hurting himself by training with these guys in Britain. He doesn't have any other champs that he's rubbing up against over there. You know, he's training with Michael Bisping. You know, no disrespect to Bisping, but he's not quite on the level of some other guys. Like, you know, Evans is training with guys like GSP. You know, so iron sharpens iron, as Joe Rogan always likes to say. And the Greg Jackson camp is just a very smart camp. You know, they come up with good battle plans, and I think Evans has probably learned from his brutal loss to Lyoto Machida. He's learned that he's not a puncher, he's not a kicker. He's learned that he needs to stick to his wrestling, punch when he can, and I think we're going to see him follow that plan to victory here at upcoming UFC 114. So, this is Streebo from Mutantville.com. I'm going to sign out, but I hope you will find me on Facebook. You can check out the link below for Streebo's Magic Friends. That's my fan page where I just put up kind of endless stream of information about horror or fantasy or science fiction, just speculative fiction on the whole. If I see you comment on there, I'll eventually add you to my private profile, and we can talk about MMA or horror movies or, you know, comic books or whatever, any kind of goofy thing, whatever kind of thing crosses our mind. Also check out our fan pages for our ongoing projects such as Ghost and Devil Comes Down, all these other things. Visit us at Mutantville.com, and we'll keep doing these MMA minutes for you here at MVP, and keep talking about the world of mixed martial arts and a lot of fun things coming up. We've got Strikeforce coming up very soon, Fedor versus Verdun. We've got the Kung Lee versus Scott Smith rematch. We've got Brock Lesnar versus Carwin coming down the road. A lot of fun things coming, so definitely